So you know that thing I said would happen to books if the right got a taste of power? Well, they got their taste of power. Guess what happened? Here we go again. Another group of right-wing idiots banned the book because it talks about things they don't want kids to know. From the New York Times, quote, "A school board in Tennessee voted unanimously this month to ban Mouse, a Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel about the Holocaust, from being taught in its classrooms because it contains materials that board members said was inappropriate for students." I'm sure it does. It continues, quote, "According to the minutes of a McMinn County Board of Education meeting, the 10-person board voted on January 10th to remove the book from the 8th grade curriculum, which portrays Jews as mice and Nazis as cats in telling the story of the author's parents' experience during the Holocaust. Members of the board said the book contained inappropriate curse words and a depiction of a naked character." Yes, because I'm sure it was the cuss words and Minnie Mouse's exposed nanny that got it banned. Totally had nothing to do at all with it talking negatively about the Holocaust. I mean, come on. This is Tennessee, the literal birthplace of the KKK. You're gonna have to try a little harder than that if you want me to believe it was the cuss words that bothered you. But come on, give me your spin. Quote, "There's some rough, objectionable language in this book," said Lee Parkinson. Really? You mean a book recounting how Germans viciously murdered Jews has rough language in it? What'd you think was gonna happen, baby? Did you think the Jewish people would be grateful for being murdered? Did you think the Germans would be nice about what they did? Or is this really about you not wanting kids to find out how people who share your political point of view really behave? It continues, quote, "During the McMinn County Board's discussion of Mouse, several board members discussed redacting profanity or said they did not object to teaching the history of the Holocaust." Redacting. You mean editing the book. Censoring the book to remove the no-no words you don't like. And I know they said they didn't object to teaching about the Holocaust. Several of the board members made statements like that, seemingly having no problem with the topic. One person even defended the need to show the very content they eventually banned, probably because of statements like this, quote, "One of the board members, Mike Cochran, said he objected to the language and depiction of nudity. We don't need this stuff to teach kids history," he said, according to the minutes. "We can teach them history, and we can teach them graphic history. We can tell them exactly what happened. But we don't need all the nakedness and all the other stuff." Yes, why show kids the cruelty man can inflict on his fellow man, so they can see and understand the true evil of racism, when you could just tell them that some bad people did some bad things and then quickly move on. CNBC had more of the minutes from the meeting, particularly that part about censoring the book. Apparently, Parkinson said he'd spoken to the school or the board's attorney, and they decided that the best way to handle the no-no words, because that's totally why this is happening, was to cut them out. Quote, "Considering copyright, we decided to redact it, to get rid of the 8 cuss words and the picture of the woman that was objected to." 8 words. 8 words. 8. It's a 300-page book, and you're bitching about 8 words scattered all over those pages. I'm noticing a pattern with the right, and their moral objections to inappropriate materials being taught to kids. There's never a lot of it in the book. It's almost like it's not the content that's the problem, but the subject that's the problem. Like they go looking for books that have things they don't like so they can ban them, and then use that as a pretense for banning everything they really want to ban. How else could you draw this idiotic conclusion? Quote, one member, Tony Allman, was quoted in the minutes as saying, "Being in schools, educators and stuff, we don't need to enable or somewhat promote this stuff." By saying that it happened? Look, baby, I know you're from Tennessee, but you can't be that fucking inbred. Rub your 2 brain cells together and for once in your sorry-ass life, think. What child, other than you, would read a book about the horrors of the Holocaust and draw the conclusion that it's a good thing to do? Who, other than the spawn of Dixiecrats, who else would think like this? No one. No one with a functioning brain and who didn't grow up being taught about the lost cause would ever think that. He then says, quote, "It shows people hanging, shows them killing kids. Why does the educational system promote this kind of stuff? It is not wise or healthy. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's your job to educate kids about history, you ass. I know you're telling on yourself and your fucking ancestors when you do it, but that doesn't mean you get to hide the truth. People who look like and share the same political views as you did some really fucked up things, and kids need to be taught about that so that they don't do them too, and so that they can learn to recognize evil when it's right in front of them, like when they see you. He also said, quote, "I'll understand that on TV, and maybe at home, these kids hear worse. But we're talking about things that if a student went down the hallway and said this, our disciplinary policy says they can be disciplined, and rightfully so. And we are teaching this and going against policy? I'm sure that sounds logical to you, but for those of us whose sister isn't our mother, that made no fucking sense. Kids read and hear words they're not supposed to say all the time. I really doubt that seeing 8 words in a 300-page book they probably don't want to read is suddenly going to make them cuss happy. Might make them care about the Jewish people, though, so I guess that's a loss for you. But let's go back to this censoring thing, because I'm not going to let that shit slide. How do you plan on redacting the books? What, are you going to buy a bunch of copies and then go at them with Sharpies? Are you going to draw on all the naked bodies? Or do you think the publisher would reprint an edited version for you? At some point, they must have realized that none of those were an option, so like true pussies, they just pulled the book. Now, there is a plus side. CNBC spoke with Art Spiegelman, the author of Mouse, and he said that he was baffled by the whole thing since he'd met young people who learned a lot from his book. And then he said this, quote, "I also understand that Tennessee is obviously demented. There's something going on very, very haywire there. Well, I'm sure there's something involving hay and wire at some point, because how else are they going to get rid of the evidence? It's not like there's an abortion clinic nearby." I expected something like this to happen, with this book actually, and I think it's going to keep happening because this is what the right does. I wouldn't be surprised if the next book on the list is March, or They Call Us Enemy, or Persepolis, which I think is actually on the Texas ban list, or Habibi, because this isn't about stopping indoctrination. That's a red herring. This is about controlling the narrative and pushing a biased, dare I say, whitewashed view of the world. And if that means hiding the history of sexism or racism or anti-Semitism to the point that you'd rather ban books than let kids read 8 dirty words, well, that's what they're going to do. It's all about the narrative and the feels. Facts be damned. And to my fellow liberal-minded people, I understand that you don't like Uncle Bad Touch, or Skeletor, or the Walking Ball Sack, and you're not a fan of the Wakandans. I don't like them either. I understand you want everyone to get along, and you want to be welcoming of new people, and want to make new allies. But you shouldn't be so tolerant that you tolerate intolerance, because this is what you get. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.